90% of my brain was thinking about how to lose weight. I'm like, I was so worried about my food and all, everything. I felt dumb. I felt
Yeah.
like, seriously, like you can't figure out how to lose 60, 70 pounds.
Yeah.
Like you can't just eat less.
On today's episode, I have Emily Christensen here, and I am super pumped to dive into more of Emily's story, hear about how she really helps and serves women in the wellness space, and just what her journey has looked like up until this point. And so, Emily, thank you so much for being here. I'm so happy to chat today.
Yes, me too.
It's going to be great, my friend. I would love to kind of dive in and hear a little bit more of what brought you to where you are. I know you have a really profound health story yourself, a lot of things that you've specifically gone through, struggled with, and have had to manage related to your health and wellness throughout your years of life. So can you kind of walk us through just briefly that part of your journey and kind of what led you to where you are now?
Yeah. So growing up in the 90s, lots of diet culture, and I struggled a lot with body image. Even though I didn't really struggle with my health or my weight, I still struggled a lot with not liking my body, thinking that it needed to be different. And when I started having kids in my early 20s, that's when I started to struggle with weight. I never was able to lose weight. I have 5 kids. And so when I got pregnant with my fifth, I was at my highest weight that I'd ever been. So that was very scary for me. And I had researched bariatric surgery, specifically gastric sleeves, and it just seemed like the golden ticket for me. And so as soon as I had my fifth baby, I did have a gastric sleeve done, and it was amazing. It was the metabolic reset that I needed, though I felt like my body had just been waiting for that help for a long time. And so the weight came off really pretty easily. And I got to my lowest weight and I thought, I just want to be skinny. Like, this is so great. Here I am. I made it. And then, life happens and I realized this is going to be really difficult to maintain because with any bariatric surgery, it's natural to start getting hungrier again. And I was exercising every day. I was running 2 to 3 miles a day and I was lifting weights 5 days a week and really putting my body through it while only being able to physically eat 4 ounces of food at a time. And so I realized I'm going to have to up my calories, up my protein. And I kind of felt alone in that. And I just kind of had to do it blind and a little bit like rip the band-aid off and just put your head down, and you're going to have to start trusting your body. You're going to have to see the scale go up a little bit. And so I did see that. And then came time for the mindset work, which probably should have happened first. But I spent probably a year and a half, a little bit depressed, a little scared, but hopeful that I could get it figured out. And I feel like I have come to a place where I have a lot of self-trust. I feel a lot of balance in my life.
It's so good. And one of the things that you spoke on that really speaks to me, like growing up in the 90s, right? And really trying to manage all of the crazy amounts of diet culture messaging, all of the narratives to just shrink yourself, just be smaller, just lose weight.
Yes.
That is the only thing you need to focus on in order to be healthy. And that is so overwhelming, right? It is really hard to understand on a deeper level, like what that really does to our inside out wellness. Because I know for me, and I'm sure you experience this too, like you adopt narratives and you start to tell yourself certain things based on what you're seeing and based on what's marketed to you. And that's so incredibly defeating when you really want to get to this place of taking care of yourself from the inside out, feeling strong, feeling energized, feeling like you can be around for all of the things that matter in your life. And when you're bombarded with all of this really mixed messaging marketing, it can be really, really hard to discern, like, what do I actually need?
Well, and even just to accept your body, I'm barely 5'2" tall. But we were seeing the Victoria's Secret fashion show and America's Next Top Model, and you had to be 5'10" plus to be considered beautiful. And so that was really confusing growing up in that. And then, yes, nobody talking about the long-term effects of what it means to be getting skinny your whole life. And that's what kind of scared me. It was like, oh, like if I'm only worried about staying skinny and getting skinny, that means I can only eat like 700 calories a day to
Right.
maintain where I had gotten. And I'm like, I can't do that. And so I knew that I was going to have to make a change.
Yes, and that's so common for women. I know this is something I've gone through my own journey as well, is this idea of I just have to work harder and keep moving more and keep pushing more and keep doing more and eating less, and that's going to help me maintain or
Hmm.
stay where I need to be or be quote unquote healthy. And wow, nothing could be further from the truth, right? And I know that you've likely learned this too along the way. Like, what do you really need for longevity? What do you really need for strength? How do you really take care of yourself with intention from the inside out? And so I'd love to kind of move into a little bit of that. You talked a little bit about the mindset side of working through these narratives and what we've seen or been shown for so long as far as what's healthy or what we need to strive for. Talk about the mental blocks that you've had to work through personally and kind of what you work through with other women too that you talk to.
Well, you've said it a few times. It's what have we seen? What have we been shown? And all that does is it's comparison. And I know it's like comparison is a
Yeah.
thief of joy. Like we all understand that, but when you're trying to change your body, I mean, I know that I was hyper focused on searching other women's before and after photos. Like I was like, oh my gosh, look at how they look now. Like look at their before and after pictures. And then you start your journey, whether it's, there's so many tools out there now to help you, get to where you want to be or think you want to be. And there's so many before and afters that you can compare yourself to. So that's the first thing that I talk about with women is cutting that out and really truly understanding that their before and after picture, it doesn't show you anything. It doesn't tell you any of their story. And like as somebody like me, I share a lot of my life on social media, but I don't share
Yeah.
more than what I do share. There's so much going on behind the scenes. And when you truly understand that, it's a lot easier to just take those pictures or videos at face value. But it's challenging because they're everywhere. So I'm a big believer in the mute button,
Yeah.
hiding accounts that don't make you feel excited if they make you feel less than. I'm a big believer in muting.
Yeah. And it's empowering to hear that, right? Like you are in charge of what you consume. And it's so important to kind of take that mental checklist and pause to say, is this really serving me, right? Does this help me feel better? Does this help me feel like energized and empowered and like I want to, improve in whatever aspect of my life it might be? Or is it doing the opposite? And being able to really kind of, again, discern what really serves you best is such a huge part of inside out wellness. And so I appreciate you sharing that, Emily, because comparison is a big thing inside of the health space.
Well, and what I've learned from working with women is that a lot of it, and I myself do it, we get into a rhythm, which is what I talk about with them next, is setting your own rhythm. But we get into a routine that we feel comfortable with where, we're hitting our goals or, mostly hitting our protein goals, our work, whatever they are. And then we see somebody on some account doing something a little different.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, maybe I should up my steps.
Yeah.
Or maybe I need to work out in the morning and not the evening because she
Right.
does. And then, then you fall into this impossible to keep routine. And that's when you fall off because you've designed a routine that does not fit your
Yeah.
lifestyle.
I love that you're sharing this because this is one of the things that's super close to my heart and my passion as a women's health coach is this idea of building bio individual plans, right? Like figuring out what do you need? What are your unique imbalances and deficiencies? What fits for your lifestyle and the season you're in? And then crafting something that actually fits into that versus the opposite. And so much of the diet culture industry, the wellness space overall is typically this messaging around just adopt this program, just try this nutrition, just take this pill and that's all you need. And it's not centered around, but how do you really figure out what it is that you individually need? And I love that you're speaking on that, empowering women to really do that because it matters so much.
Yeah. I think that if you can't figure out your own rhythm, you'll spend years chasing something that doesn't even serve you. And it might even be
Yes.
leading you down a path that you didn't really want.
Right. Right. And it's good to like have conversations like this so women can kind of hear, what perspectives we've all kind of maybe experienced, but also like giving you permission to say like what really serves you and leaning into that. And I know one of the things you talked about in your story was learning to really trust your body, like learning to really kind of rebuild that relationship. And I know that's something that a lot of women struggle with. I talk about this with women all the time. I've experienced it in my own life, like this idea of feeling empowered in your own body, trusting your own body, trusting yourself and your intuition, and then building health plans, protocols, habits from there. Can you talk a little bit about what you've done to really start to rebuild that trust and kind of maintain it throughout your journey?
Okay, we are like we're following perfectly what the order that I teach
I love it.
my women that I work with. So the next thing that we talk about is we talk about nourishment and movement out of a place of love and not judgment. So we talk a lot about the emotional eating. So for me, before I had my surgery, before I even had my last baby, I did personal one-on-one food therapy. And I love that experience, but I did the 6 months and I left not really understanding what my personal emotional triggers were to that led me to like the binge eating and that kind of a thing. And it was after my surgery, and I told this story a bunch of times, but I was making dinner. I have all these kids, it's very noisy.
Yeah.
And I'm like, have dinner. I'm starving because I saved all my calories till the end of the day,
Yeah.
And because I'm a work in progress. This is a couple years ago, but I'm sitting in the pantry and I'm like eating a graham cracker or something. And I'm like, what is triggering me? Like, I'm not sad. I'm not really mad. Like, what is it? And I realized that it's that overstimulation. I'm like, oh, that's my trigger. So from there, I've had to learn, like, okay, you absolutely cannot not eat between lunch and dinner. Like, you need to plan on an afternoon snack. So whether that's, you have vegetables and dip prepared or a boiled egg prepared or protein ball, whatever, you have something that's easy grab and go that it's okay to snack on while you make dinner. That's actually okay. You can snack while you eat dinner. And being okay with that, giving myself permission to eat before a meal is allowed. And
Yeah.
then also I do something that is probably like not like great parenting advice, but sometimes I put in my headphones
Yeah.
while, the kids are, they're playing with friends, whatever. And I make dinner just with a little bit less noise. And that keeps me in the kitchen and not in the
Yeah.
pantry. So that helps me personally.
I love that. And, I think you're speaking to a lot of moms right now who understand the magnitude of like feeling so overstimulated, right? When you have a lot going on in your house, you have a lot of kids, noise, all the things. And I know that a lot of the women I speak to, like, we don't even realize like what we're potentially leaning on or using as ways to fill the void or potentially deal with or manage some of that overstimulation that we experience. And so I love that you're calling it to attention through the process of how you identified it, but then what tools you've used to help kind of calm that down a little bit and help you build some more self-awareness around, what are the things that trigger me and how do I make sure I have things to kind of support me in a direction that I know I want to go for my health, that I know I want to go in a way that feels a little bit more productive, whatever you want to call it, right? And so I
Right.
love that
It's
you're
so
sharing that
true.
because it's so real. Yeah.
It is so real. And I feel like the default answer for everybody, like when you feel emotionally triggered, go
Yeah.
take a walk. Go take a walk. I'm like, that doesn't really work for me during the day,
Yeah.
typically, And so again, it kind of goes back to the comparison and setting your own rhythm. You
Yes.
really do have to figure out what works for you because that just might not be feasible in your life to just drop it and go take a walk. That doesn't always work.
Yeah.
But yeah, figuring out what works for you.
Yeah. Yes. What works for you? I mean, we cannot say that enough. And I think in every conversation we're having inside of women's health, like we need to be sharing that over and over and over because for so long we've been kind of programmed to not really trust our bodies, to not trust our intuition, to not like adopt what feels good or works into our own lifestyle. Instead, we've been kind of programmed to do the opposite. And one of my goals as a coach, and I know you feel strongly about this too, is empowering women to understand like you are on your own individual journey. And whatever works for your lifestyle, like you don't have to over explain, you don't have to over figure out in any capacity other than what works for you because it works for you. And that's all that matters.
Right. And the other piece that I didn't touch on yet, when I talk with them about this, nourishment and movement in a non-judgmental way, is dealing with the guilt that comes from when you don't honor your hopeful new habits and the guilt that comes with that. And instead of being guilty, it's kind of like my pantry story. Instead of eating the graham cracker and being like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that I did that again. This is so like, can't believe I did that. Learn from it. And you have to sit with it and think, why did I just eat that? Like, why did I do that? Or why did I skip my workout again? What is going on? How do I backtrack on that? So instead of feeling guilty about it, learn from it, take the emotion out of it. That's something that I learned a few years ago, that food, and I would even throw in movement, it has no moral value. It just is a thing.
Yeah.
And it doesn't make you bad, but you can learn from it. And what you can take from it is if that made you feel sick or, overly sore, like let's say you swung the other way and, after Thanksgiving dinner, you punish yourself the next day with a workout and then you can't walk for 3 days, that doesn't make sense either. So I think like kind of dissecting those choices that we make and learning from them instead, because the guilt just throws you back into the cycle of, whether it's binging and restricting or just, it's just not good. It's hard to break out of it, but it is possible. You just have to take the emotion out of it and figure out, why did I decide to go that route this time?
We'll get back to our conversation shortly after this message. If you are an overwhelmed and completely confused mom who just wants a simplified, easy to follow, and understandable plan when it comes to their health and wellness journey, then you're in the right place. As a wellness coach, I focus most on empowering women to follow a highly personalized and bio-individual plan that actually gets you results and that feels sustainable for your longevity. I'd love to invite you to set up a free coaching call to talk about your health and wellness journey. Head to erinshreer.com/coaching to set up your call today. Again, that URL is erinshreer.com/coaching to set up your call. And to make it even easier, head to the show notes of this podcast and click free coaching session to set up your call ASAP. Now let's dive back into the conversation.
Yeah. Guilt is something that, so many of us deal with. And I know as moms, especially, like we have guilt in so many different areas of our life for different reasons. And, I love that you're just really speaking to this idea of how important it is to take some of the emotion out of the journey and really just try to get self-aware enough to learn, right? To grow, to evolve, to figure out like, how is it that you want to maybe improve in some capacity? It doesn't have to be a huge emotionally charged thing. And a lot of that is built from just becoming self-aware and really understanding, like, you don't have to beat yourself up or tear yourself down or feel like you're bad, like you kind of talked about, for not doing maybe what you said you were going to do, et cetera. It's more or less an opportunity to get more self-aware, an opportunity to really dig into yourself even more and figure out, why am I doing this? But also, what can I do to be better? Like, what do I want to improve and why? Like, why does it actually matter? Emily, one of the things I'd love for you to talk a little bit about, because I see this in women's health too, is like this idea of like needing support, needing help, needing tools. I know you talked about in your story how you got gastric sleeve surgery. Other women have different kinds of support tools that they utilize in order to help them in a variety of different capacities, right? And I think sometimes as women, and I hear this in my conversations, we feel guilty for needing support, for needing help, for needing, some sort of tool in order to help us continue to press forward in our life and in our health. Talk through some of the emotional capacity or the emotional things that you've maybe managed and what you've maybe heard from other women too.
Oh yeah. I didn't really feel guilty getting my surgery. I felt dumb. I felt like, seriously, like you can't figure out how to lose 60, 70 pounds.
Yeah.
Like, you can't just eat less.
Yeah.
I felt really dumb, but I did it anyways. And coming out on the other side, like I mentioned, the metabolic reset that you get with the bariatric surgery, I feel like my body, like who I was meant to be, was just kind of suffocating through hormonal imbalances. And with like all the GLP talk and how it affects your hormones and levels them out, I'm like, okay, maybe I really truly did have a severe hormone imbalance that I did need a tool for that. And I just, I'm not really a mom guilt person. And I feel like women now, I don't know how to say it. I want to be kind and like, I understand everybody's positions are different and their finances, everything's different. But at this point, there are so many ways to change your life that
Yeah.
there's so much available, and it doesn't have to be expensive. Uh, but there is a lot out there, and you just have to want it bad enough to research it and find it. And it's amazing. And so I feel bad when women are still stuck in that mentality of I like guilty for getting help, because it's like it's 2025. Like we are so lucky. Like I feel very, very lucky to have all of the support that's out there, and even like chat GPT. Like, if that's like if that's what you can handle, use it. Use it. It's so good. But I do
Yeah.
think that what keeps women stuck is the emotion. Like if you can't take the emotion out of your health journey, it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard because when you make mistakes or if the scale goes up and you're emotionally attached to that number, it is really painful. It's really hard. And so I feel bad. This makes me feel bad. I'm like, oh, life without the emotion attached to your health journey just feels so much better. It's so much better, but it is really, I get it's difficult to pull it out.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I love that you said that we are really truly so lucky and there's so much at our disposal, right? Like there are so many ways to get support, to get help, to get tools in your toolbox, right? And it doesn't have to be this huge like overhaul of all the things.
Hmm.
And I think sometimes, again, in the wellness space, like that's what it can feel like, right? It can be
Oh, yeah.
romanticized. It can be this whole thing of how you have to turn your life upside down. And it doesn't have to be that way. Like you can start small and there's so much you can do. And I love that you're really like empowering women to understand, like, you don't have to stay stuck. There's so much available. And the idea
Well,
of
and
like
in
needing
their
support
defense,
and help and
I gotta
tools and
backtrack.
guidance.
Because in their defense, I feel like where we dealt with the diet culture of like, you need to be as skinny as possible. Now the other side of it is like, you can be a fitness like girl, you can be this. All you have to do is turn your life upside down. So it's like, like we swung the other way. It's like you got to find like the 1% changes. Do one thing for the whole month, and then next month do one more thing for the whole month. Like you don't even have to add things in week by week. Like you will see
Right.
positive changes when you make positive changes, even if they're small.
100%. Starting small and doing things in a small capacity. Like that is what makes it
Hmm.
feel sustainable and manageable.
Yeah.
And that's how you figure out what really works for you, right? Because there's things you'll probably try. And I know you've done this too, probably, and I have. Like I've done things and I'm like, you know what? That doesn't fit. Like this doesn't feel good. This doesn't really align with where I want to go with my journey or whatever, and have pivoted into something different. And so it's continuing to empower women to understand like, this is really what we want for you. We want you to really understand the value of not comparing yourself and figuring out what works for your bio-individual journey. And, Emily, I know one of the things that you've talked about just in some of the things you've shared with me is this idea of like putting your blinders on, right? And what that really means in order to actually craft what you need on your health journey. So can you talk a little bit about, what you've done to put blinders on? I know you've talked about like muting on social and things like that,
Hmm.
but what else have you done, maybe mentally, emotionally, et cetera, that has helped you?
Yeah. Well, I mean, when I see other people share their before and afters, I just think of everything going on behind the scenes that they're not sharing.
Yeah.
Because, there are challenges that come in your life when you have a major change. And what I learned too is that losing weight, it doesn't solve any of your other problems.
Right.
In fact, it kind of magnifies them. Because for me, what was really crazy was once the weight started falling off easily, my mind was so open and clear that I realized, I mean, I have all these kids. I'm like, 90% of my brain was thinking about how to lose weight. And now that I don't have that worry, I'm like, oh my gosh, like I have all these kids and I have a husband and I have, all these things. But I'm like, I was so worried about my food and all, everything. And so that's like, for me, like when I see people who are like only showing the highlight reel, I'm like, that's great. We all have those high moments, but to be clear, you're 5'2" tall. That's not that tall. So you're going to look very different. You have carried and birthed 5 children. That's a big toll on your body. And so just to be really realistic with what you have already experienced and what you put your body through, whether it's, by choice or not, we're all just so different.
Yeah. We're all so different. The highlight reel, right? The highlight reel is the
Hmm.
biggest thing that we have to always be reminded of, especially when it comes to the connected world that we live in, which is a gift, but it also can
Okay.
really play tricks on your mind. And
Yeah.
especially in the motherhood space, the women's health space, like there's just a lot that we have to take the time and pause through because there's so much that isn't shared. And I love that you're kind of sharing that because women need to hear it. Women need to be reminded, like, this isn't always the whole story. There's so much more that happens behind the scenes. And we have to make sure that we're giving ourselves grace, space, and time to continue to figure out like what really speaks to us, what feels aligned to us. You know, Emily, I know one of the things that you've shared a little bit is how you've kind of moved from weight loss and really trying to kind of focus on that as a goal into like, how do I get into long-term focused health? How do I get into strength building? How do I shift my mindset? Talk a little bit about that journey and how you've shifted.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of it does come from seeing other women in my life who I know have really valued being skinny. And unfortunately for them, they didn't have the tools that we have. All they had was move more and eat less,
Yep.
or just eat less. Movement wasn't even really that important.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe cardio, but not so much the weight build or the strength building. And so to see them now, and it's like, like that makes me so sad that like your mind is so energetic, but I can tell that physically, because all you care, all that you thought you needed to do was to just be smaller, 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 you don't get to do what you really want to do. And not just, it's really, really heartbreaking to watch. And it just makes me sad. And so I have told myself, I want to be a strong grandma. Weighing more in my 30s and 40s is more important to me so I can have muscle in my 70s
Yeah.
and be strong.
Yes. And you know that is something that I love that that's been the shift. Like we've been shifting that more and more and more inside of the women's health narrative about how we need to be like we need to be chasing our strongest selves. We need to be building into our strongest, most resilient bodies and brains. So we're here for the long haul. So we can really attack longevity in a very profound way with clarity and so much more. And so I love that you're really talking about, how your goals have shifted and why they've shifted and what you've seen kind of in your own journey, in your own life and the people around you, and how you really want to make sure you're focusing on what feels good to you and how you want to show up for your life. And so I love that, my friend. One thing I'd love to ask before we kind of wrap up is, you're a mom of 5, and that is amazing, right? Like you manage so much in your home with 5 kids, your relationships, your marriage, your own journey, etc. One of the things that I know I've learned as a mom of 4 is just like this idea of having to make sure that I'm taking care of myself and why that really matters for being able to show up for all of these amazing people that I have been blessed to care for. And so I'd love for you to talk a little bit about, stepping into motherhood and as you've gone into your own health journey, how have you learned or what has it meant to you to really focus on self-care and why does that matter so much to you?
Yeah, so I started this whole serious weight loss journey when my baby was 2 months old or 3 months old. So very young. And so I learned, throughout the last few years, I'm going to have to find time to get my exercise in. So what works for my family right now is that I wake up early at like really pretty early, like 4:30 in the morning. So that way I can have about an hour and a half to myself to do some tidying, do a little bit of laundry, and I get my workout in before my kids wake up. And I love it that they know to come find me in the garage before breakfast, that they just know that I'm going to be in there. And if I'm not in there, they're like, oh, well, did you already get your workout in? And, I'll just tell them whatever. And I love that I get to be part of a good example for them as far as the health thing. But like I mentioned too, when the weight came off and I realized I had spent like 10 years of motherhood being really worried about how my body looked. And because of that, I pulled myself out of a lot of memories. And I remember I would hold a lot of resentment towards my husband because he's always been really fit. He's like a Spartan runner. Like he really values his health. And so he would take the kids hiking. And I'm like, I was too worried that I wasn't going to be able to keep up, that I would look gross in my workout clothes. And so I would say, I'll just stay home and take care of the baby, or I'll just stay home and clean the house, whatever. And I would get really resentful because I was, I blamed it on him, but it was all on me. It was all my insecurities. So now that I feel so much more comfortable in my own body, I feel confident in my skills that I can do all the things that, that he wants to do, that the kids want to do.
Yeah.
It just feels so much more harmonious at home. And I feel like there's so much more balance between our relationship as far as like taking care of the kids on a Saturday. It doesn't have to be mom home doing chores, dad out entertaining the kids. Like we can do chores together in the morning and then we go out for the afternoon together. And I just really, the flip has been really amazing and needed, for a functioning house.
Yeah, I cannot thank you enough for kind of sharing that in a very vulnerable way, because I know that there will be women listening to this that can relate to that. I can relate to that in seasons of my life, feeling like I didn't want to go out of the house because I felt embarrassed by the way I looked, or I had no energy, or I had whatever, insert blank, right? And there were always these negative soundtracks that I really had to work through mentally because of my history, because of what I thought I needed to do to be healthy, whatever it is. And so I just appreciate you sharing that, Emily, because it's so real for women. And the more we have these conversations and normalize that part of the journey, like the more profound of an impact it makes for women inside the women's health space. And so I can't thank you enough, my friend. Really quickly, before we wrap up, will you share how people can find you? I know you're working with women slowly inside of coaching, et cetera. So talk a little bit about how women can connect with you more to hear more of your story or just learn a little bit more from you.
Yeah, so my main platform is Instagram, so it's at the Emily Christensen, and I do value sharing the real side of it all. That's why I started sharing my gastric sleeve in the first place, is because I felt like there wasn't an account that was really telling me like what to expect after my surgery, and so I just kind of carried that on throughout the whole process. And now I have been working with women one-on-one as well as doing different group coaching, and so that will be available as well.
That's awesome. And we will make sure everything is linked in the show notes. So if you want to connect more with Emily, hear more about her story, share your story, and just be in community, we'll make sure everything's in the show notes so you can connect with her more. And Emily, thank you again for your incredible perspective today.
Thank you.
Just for sharing your heart. Like, I cannot say enough how much I value these amazing conversations where we're normalizing all of these different facets of health for women. We're talking about the things that maybe feel harder. We're encouraging women to really figure out what works for them. And we're doing that through transparently sharing our stories and our hearts and what we're passionate about. And so, Emily, thank you again for your time today, my friend. So grateful for you.
Thank you so much.
Take care.
Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode. I know balancing time and energy can be a challenge, and I'm so proud of you for listening in and investing in your wellness journey. I feel incredibly grateful to connect with you and for the opportunity to share more knowledge, stories, and encouragement related to all things wellness. I would love to hear how this podcast has served you. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe and leave a review on either iTunes or Spotify. Your support truly means the world to me and helps me reach more women just like you and me who are looking to transform their health from the inside out. Plus, when you share this episode with a friend, we invite more women in to learn alongside us. What a gift. Remember, knowledge is power, and the more we know, the better we can do. For ourselves, for our families, and our future. Well done on taking the step towards a healthier, happier you. Until next week, stay empowered and stay well.